In jazz, blue notes are defined as notes that are played at a slightly different pitch than standard. They're notes that defy convention and help give jazz its unique, soulful sound. I don't think there could be any better way to describe Blue Giant. This movie is just drenched in blue in every sense of the word. It's a story that touches anyone who's read or watched it, and each of the core characters explore what it means to be blue and be different in a world that's not always welcoming to the creative. My first experience with Blue Giant was when the English manga was published a few years ago, and I was just relieved to be reading a story where people weren't getting blown up or shooting energy blasts. And yes, I know that slice of life shoujo stories can be great without excessive violence, but something about an up-and-coming jazz musician trying to make his way in the world just grabbed me more than any of those other types of stories. Blue Giant exists in our modern world where jazz is a niche genre of music, but still protagonist Dai pursues his passion of becoming a jazz musician despite that. Like a typical shonen protagonist, Dai pays no attention to the odds stacked against his success, and that makes him easy to root for. There's no world-ending threat for Dai to defeat, no risk of death in his quest to become a musician, but somehow the stakes in Blue Giant have never been higher. Blue Giant originally began publishing in 2013, and since then has spawned several sequel series. The first time I heard about it was in 2020 when the manga was published in English by Seven Seas Entertainment, and now it seems to have garnered cult favorite status. I'm only be focusing on the movie here, but the story in the manga and the movie are almost identical. The movie was released in 2023 by the studio Nut, and when trailers for this first released, it immediately landed on my radar. I remember reading the manga and just so desperately wanting to be able to hear the music that was being played, and I was so happy to see that the audio design in this movie was just completely knocked out of the park. The score was composed by Hiromi Uehara, and I can only imagine how daunting a task it was to write music for an adaptation where sound is so essential yet none existed. Hiromi actually wrote the music for Blue Giant before she was even hired for the film, and that passion bleeds over into the finished product. The music is accessible in the same way that everyone started listening to Caravan when Whiplash came out, but there are also times where the playing needs to tie in thematically with what's going on in the scene. When Tamada is first learning to keep time, he sounds accurately amateurish, later on in the film's final number, she recorded the piano part with one hand. Blue Giant explores the struggles of a creative through its three main characters. Dai's story is the most accessible. A young, hard-headed prodigy that's easy to root for pursues his passion and won't take no for an answer. Yukinori Sawabe is an established musician who's been playing since age 4. Shinji Tamada picks up drumming at the start of the story and is much further behind than the other two members of the jazz trio. With Dai's story, it's easy to take away the lesson that hard work pays off and his tenacity comes easily. Manga is framed with these documentary interviews from side characters, supposedly for a film set in the future of the story after Dai becomes famous. It acts as a reminder that no matter how unlikely Dai's success looked in the moment, he would still end up successful if he put in enough effort. Tamada is the least experienced and consistently feels inadequate. He's often reminded of his inferiority by Sawabe and is constantly plagued with the fear that he simply started too late. But his search for a group of friends that match his level of passion brings him to the jazz trio, and he makes up for his lack of experience with hard work. But of the three, the most interesting and tragic story is Sawabe's, and it's not even because of what happens to him at the end of the film. When Dai meets Sawabe, Dai recognizes himself as inferior. But after hearing Dai play, Sawabe's imposter syndrome sets in. Dai clearly has more talent than Sawabe, despite playing a fraction of the time, and all of Sawabe's accomplishments up to that point no longer mean anything to him. This feeling of imposter syndrome is exacerbated when the club promoter points out that although Dai and even Tamada are talented, Sawabe is mediocre. I think this is a feeling that everybody goes through at some point in their life, and seeing Sawabe power through that and prove the promoter wrong, to me is more inspiring than even Dai's story. The title Blue Giant refers to Dai's ability to burn intensely and brightly just like the celestial body, but the arc of all three of these characters explore what it means to be blue. In fact, the whole movie is blue. The water, the buildings, the jazz clubs, the soccer uniforms. The color palette is very appealing, and one of the few times other coloring is explored is when the characters are expressing themselves through music. Blue can be happy, blue can be sad, but ultimately it's just different. A Blue Giant is a story for those who are different. To me, Blue Giant is more than just about pursuing an artistic passion, but fighting your own battle to achieve your dream. I think you could put anybody in any pursuit into one of these three character archetypes, and seeing how they overcome that adversity is a big reason why this series has the following that it does.